Houston Real Estate Radio starts right now.
Welcome back. You're listening to Houston Real Estate Radio, and this segment is sponsored by The Perfect Light. They are an outdoor landscape lighting company in the Woodlands. You can find them at theperfectlight.com, and they also do mosquito misting systems, so be sure and give them a call this summer before you get ready to have your big event in the backyard. You're going to need that. All right, James and I are back here in the studio, and we are talking with Dr. Jim Gaines. If you've got questions for us, you can call us. That number is 281-882-8088. That number again is 281-882-8088. And you can also tweet us your questions using hashtag HRER. So great to have you back in the studio with us, Dr. Gaines. You always bring us such great insights, some great information, and really, let's just continue on that great conversation we were having.
Jim, tell us about now. You left me in a little bit of a pickle here because you said that you said that Houston.
Oh, I succeeded.
You did. You said that Houston would be okay, that the fundamentals were good. But I'm asking you this: if there's a nationwide bubble, and because of some of these foreign investors that are going to pull out as soon as things start to turn the other direction, market-wise, housing market-wise, will that affect Houston if our fundamentals are strong?
The impact ought to be fairly minimal.
And do you think there's a nationwide bubble, first of all?
Well, I'm not sure there is yet.
Okay.
I think some of that is just recovery and the bubble effect, if you will. The fairly large increases really because it went down so low. Long run value ought to equal cost, and what's happening is some of these properties are being bought for a lot less than their replacement cost, and so that it makes it look like a bubble when maybe there isn't. And so that's tenuous of whether there's a bubble. I don't think so. I can't tell you I know so. But that's what it looks like to me. Now, could it continue enough if it goes on for another year, 2 years, 3 years? Would it then become a bubble and so forth? And particularly if in those markets it's not supported with a solid foundation on their basic fundamentals, their economic fundamentals, that could be. Then it could be. But at least for the time being, don't think so. Now, the other part of your question was, but let's assume maybe it is a bubble.
Okay. And
maybe it bursts at some point in time, a year from now, next year. Does that have an impact on Houston? It would have some, but I think it would have limited. And my answer is really based on think of what happened here the last 5 years. We had a big national price bubble and then a bust. And a lot of these markets that were going up 20, 30, 40% a year all of a sudden went down 70, 80%. Okay, and so you had the big inflated prices and then a real big bust on it. We didn't have it. I mean, we didn't have the big bubble and we didn't have the bust. In fact, the reason we didn't have the bust is because we didn't have the bubble in the first place.
We had a recession, but it wasn't like the rest of the nation.
That's right. We did. Now, we had the transaction bubble. We had lots of properties being bought and sold because of the easy financing and the easy credit and the ease with which the transactions could take place. But the good news was, and it's back to, we were talking about the construction, the home builders and building in Texas is easier than it is in a lot of these markets. Think of California, Vegas, Florida, Arizona, highly regulated, and the Northeast, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, some other states up there that have had problems. Now, I'm leaving out the upper Midwest because they had an industry collapse, the auto industry. That's a different issue.
Right.
But in our state, and in Texas, and in Houston in particular, it's pretty easy for the home builders and the building industry to keep pace with demand and keep that better balance between the supply and demand, where in some of these other areas you get a supply-constrained market and you get significant imbalance between supply and demand. And that was what created their bubble. And then on top of that, throw in the easy financing.
Right. Which is gone for everybody.
Which is gone pretty much for everybody. And now what they're looking for is trying to get that balance to come back. Well, the builders there would love to build, But they got the same kind of problems and constraints there that we do here. They don't have any lots and they don't have any inventory. Cost of materials. And some of them went out of business. We had some here go out of business.
Yeah.
But so the answer to your question is I don't think that if it is a bubble and if it burst again, I don't think as long as we don't join ranks with them and have a similar price bubble, I don't think we'll feel it that badly.
I want to move on to a question that all those sellers out there have.
All right.
Is it a good time to sell?
Is it a good time to sell?
Give us the pros and cons. What do you think?
Pros and cons. If you have if you own a house that's in a desirable area and you got a nice property, what I'm being told by almost every realtor I talk to is that they're getting multiple offers. I mean, it's no longer days on the market; it's hours on the market.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost ridiculous, really, because it's so tight that most of the agents have a list of buyers. And in fact, as soon as they even think a house is coming up for a listing, they're notifying the buyers that you better be ready to pull a trigger because
Right.
if you wait, you're
gone.
gone. And as a consequence, then there's a bidding process because if there's multiple offers. So we're hearing those kinds of things, and I know you've talked about them, you've heard them too. So if you're a seller, if you've got that kind of a property, and at least I guess don't go hog wild. I mean, if you've got a $300,000 house or a $250,000 house, don't think you're going to get $1 million. That ain't going to happen.
Right.
But somewhere within reason, and you'll probably come out and do very well. Now, whether that's good for you or not is based on how much you paid for it in the first place.
Exactly. Right.
But so I can't tell you that. So the pro is, it's now a seller's market. In a seller's market, is that a good time for a seller to sell? Sure, because you're going to get a better price. Now, the con, you said the pros and the cons. The cons are, and we were talking about this before the commercial break there a little bit, do I wait another year and get another year's worth of appreciation if the price is going to keep going up? That's called the greed factor.
I like that.
And so there's that, and so you're sitting there talking about, and all you're really deciding is the timing. Do I pull the trigger now?
Is it really going to go up enough to make a difference?
To make it worthwhile. Are interest rates going to not balloon up, which I don't think they are, but that's one of those things.
But they may continue to creep up.
But they are going to probably creep up a little bit. Now, the other side, the thing I think that a lot of sellers have in mind, will it be a little bit more if I wait another 6 months, another year, another year and a half? But number two, if I do sell, what can I buy? Because now that puts me immediately on the other side of the table. Now I'm the buyer, and I'm out looking for the market, and now I'm facing a seller's market as a buyer.
As a buyer, yeah.
Right.
And particularly those who
Not as much fun.
Not as much fun. Well, particularly if you've had it in your head that, well, I'd like to move up or move over or move here, move there, and all of a sudden you go to those areas where you'd like to go or look for that property you've been looking for, that dream house,
Can't find
and you
it.
can't find it.
Right.
And you sure maybe can't find it in the price bracket that you're looking for.
The good thing on the reverse of that, though, is that if you're a buyer, you can find the house you want and then list your house and know it's going to sell. Because before it was, let's list it, see how long it takes to sell it, and then we get the option to go buy. Where now it's find out what you want to buy, then list your house and sell it, and it can all happen at the same time.
And having been one of those buyers in the past where I had to sell a house in order to buy and ran into the market where it was the other way around and had trouble selling. That makes obviously for a lot of people that's making all the difference. Or they're going out and contracting with a contractor to build a new house.
Well, and some places are more desirable now than they were 5-10 years ago when people bought their houses. And so they're able to sell a house that maybe hasn't appreciated much, and maybe, it's in a desirable price point at a price point they don't want to sell at, but they can go buy something else in a more desirable neighborhood where they know the values are going to go up and it's worth it to sell. Plus, they're getting a more energy efficient home that's going to cost them less per month. So, there are a lot of different situations, and I know with my sellers, I look at them on a case by case basis.
Yeah, you have to, because quite frankly, Shannon, there's just so many moving parts. To try and make generalities of it's a good time to buy or it's a good time to sell. All I can do is give you a real broad generality, but for any individual, there's just too many moving parts of what they want to do. Then the good news is, if you find something you want to buy and you're buying it, you probably aren't going to have trouble selling your house as long as you've got a house that's a reasonably desirable house.
Right.
Are you still going to get the price you want for it and so on? Yeah, you might. At least you're going to get a price, and probably as good a price as you're going to get right now. Then you got to balance the timing factor and everything
well, and
else.
the other good thing for buyers is the interest rates are still low. You know, the government is still in economic recovery mode, and they've kept the interest rates down. So if you're buying now, it's still a great time to buy because you get the benefit of cheap money to buy with.
That's exactly correct. And we were talking a minute ago that the interest rates have kind of crept up the last week or two or month, and they may creep up a little bit more. But we're not going to see, you're still going to be in the, 3s and 4s for financing. And for most of us who can remember the days when it was double digits, that's still unbelievably low. Yeah. So I don't think the interest rate yet is the critical factor.
Right. It isn't deterring people
yet. It isn't the critical factor.
Now, at what point do you see them raising interest rates significantly?
Well, whenever the Fed decides that they've done enough of the QE program, and they decide that inflation is getting out of control, which at the moment it doesn't appear to be. Right. Or when they look at unemployment, they've already said that they're going to continue all of the stimulus programs until unemployment is equal to or less than 6.5%. Although they haven't said that at exactly 6.5%, that's a trigger. They've just said that's the targeted goal. And they've said inflation at less than 2% or 2.2% for the CPE. Well, CPU. That's again a goal. It's not an automatic trigger. At least that's what they've said. We'll see. They're going to have an issue when they do start doing it. It's going to have to almost be gradual. If they do it too quick, the market doesn't like.
But those are the indicators we should be looking for.
Those are the indicators. When the Fed quits buying the mortgage-backed securities from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, because right now that's the only thing creating a mortgage market in the United States is the fact that the Fed's buying the paper and the Ginnie Mae paper for FHA. If they stop buying those things, then the market is going to have trouble to adjust. Now it's interesting. They're continuously saying that what they want to do is create a private secondary market to kind of replace or augment Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and not have to rely on the government to buy these things and let the private investment market, bond market, credit market buy these instruments. Well, that will happen when interest rates get high enough that make the yield significant enough to attract the private capital.
Right.
Well, to do that means interest rates have to go back up because they're not going to buy them at 2 and 3 and 4, at least 2 and 3.5%. Now, where that trigger is, I can't tell you. When is it going to happen? I can't tell you. I can only tell you kind of what's going to do.
Yep, that's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we appreciate you being on the show with us.
My pleasure.
Great information. We'll be right back here on Houston Real Estate Radio